Indian Penal Code dealing with sedition needs to be retained through certain amendments certain amendments could be introduced. So the panel has supported the sedition law. They say that it's imperative to retain Section 124A that pertains to sedition. And Republic TV has accessed the Law Commission report. The report, in fact, says that the Section 124A of the IPC has its utility in combating anti-national and secessionist elements as it seeks to protect the elected government from attempts to overthrow it through violent and illegal means. That is the big breaking news that we are getting in, viewers. Remember, the debate surrounding sedition law has been going on for a lot of days now, and in fact, our legal editor Rhythm Bhardwaj is joining us live on the broadcast for more. Rhythm, this is a big breaking news coming in. The law panel the Law Commission has said that sedition is a reasonable restriction.
Well, the 22nd Law Commission of India, that's being headed by former Karnataka Chief Justice, that is Rituraj Avasthi, has recommended that Section 124A. Viewers, this is the section that deals with sedition, and it says it should continue to be criminalized. In May this year, we heard the Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud's bench hear the matter. The government told them we are taking key steps. After that has been told, today this Law Commission report has come out yesterday, which is very, very critical. Why this is very important is because earlier the central government had put this law in abeyance. What does this report say, viewers? The Law Commission said Section 124A needs to continue to be retained in the Indian Penal Code, though certain amendments need to be there. So the first point that we are breaking right here on Republic TV is Section 124A. The Law Commission of India recommends should be continuing to be on the statute books. This is something there was a huge uproar and controversy about for the last few years, and finally the Law Commission of India says that it needs to be in the statute books. They've also given reasoning for this, for which I will go forward to. But the second breaking news that's extremely important to know right now, the Commission recommends the scheme of punishment to be amended. In fact, right now, viewers, the 124A provides for life imprisonment or imprisonment for 3 years. What the Commission says is the jail term of 3 years has to be enhanced to 7 years. That means from the Law Commission of India, it's a very emphatic yes for this sedition law to continue to be on the statute books. We saw a lot of prominent lawyers, activists come to the Supreme Court. Senior advocate Kapil Sibal argued for them and said that this law needs to be repealed. But what does this 124A IPC has the Law Commission say? It says that the punishment that is already on the statute books is odd. It needs to be enhanced. They've given reasons for this. It's also said that there should be certain altering of the section to include with a tendency to incite violence or cause public disorder, then it should be punished with imprisonment for life. The word tendency would mean not only a mere indication to incite violence or cause public disorder, but there should be actual proof of violence or imminent threat to violence, the report has clarified. Now, they've also said that repealing of 124A from India's statute books on the mere basis that certain countries have done so is turning a blind eye to the glaring ground realities that exist in India. They've also said it's important to penalize only the pernicious tendency to incite violence or cause public disorder in the guise of exercising the right to freedom of speech and expression. I think it's an extremely important report that has to be deliberated and discussed in the Parliament as well as seen in the Supreme Court of India, because the Supreme Court kept the sedition law in abeyance. Immediately now we are seeing within less than a month the Law Commission of India comes out with a report. I do believe this means that this report is going to be seen and studied very carefully by the government, and sedition law as it is continues to be on our statute books.
All right. Of course, this is a very important development that has come in, Rhythm. In fact, the fact that you mentioned about how the Law Commission in its report says that India's ground reality is different. And this is something that is actually quite significant. Give us more context. Can you just give us more context on this when the Commission says that India's ground reality is different and it's required?
We've seen in the past a lot of people are making a lot of views forward against the government, and the Law Commission have said it will why this law is needed is because it will protect India's unity. We've accessed the 88-page report which I was reading through, and it's been very crystal clear given the reasons for the sedition law to continue to be there, and so also to be made more stringent. So the breaking news that we are breaking right here on Republic TV is not only that they want the sedition law to be continuing to be on India's statute books, but they're also saying it needs to be made more stringent. That means it has to be enhanced to 7 years. Now, also let me tell you that the offense of sedition, they've said, is a colonial legacy based on the era in which it was enacted, especially given the history of usage against India's freedom fighters. Going back that virtue, the entire framework of the Indian legal system is a colonial legacy. Now, when we're speaking about this, the Law Commission has also stressed that sedition law is needed for anti-national activities that are there, such as the Unlawful Activities Act and the National Security Act, which does not by implication cover all elements that are envisaged in the 124A. The Centre has agreed to re-examine the sedition law after the Supreme Court had put this in abeyance last year. So I think a lot of understanding needs to be done as to why the sedition law needs to be there and continues to be there. And also, let me tell you, Justice Avasthi, whom I had the pleasure of meeting a few months ago at a conference, I had spoken about this because it's a very controversial issue even then. They say that the Law Commission has said it is of the considered view that Section 124A of the IPC dealing with sedition needs to be retained. So the breaking news, like we said, viewers, is number one, the Law Commission says it needs to be retained. Number two, they say the punishment needs to be enhanced. Number three, they say it is for national security and interest, that sedition law needs to be there. Justice Rituraj Avasthi, who retired, has written a letter in this regard to Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal, giving out details about why the sedition law needs to be there, and also said by implication cover all elements of the offences and provisions and expression that incites violence against the government would invariably be tried under the special laws and counter-terror legislations which contain more stringent provisions to deal with the accused.
Right. In fact, earlier the centre had filed an affidavit, saying it will re-examine and reconsider the rationality of the sedition law rhythm. And later we also saw that central government had in fact filed a fresh petition, and it read that PM Modi is of the firm view that baggage of colonial era laws which outlived their utility must be scrapped at a time when the country is, of course, marking its 75th year of independence. So now how does this pan out really? Because the government is of this view, Prime Minister Modi is of this view that the colonial era law must be re-examined and revised. But the Law Commission, of course, their understanding, their report is something that is quite different. Now, how does this really play out now from here, Rhythm?
What's going to happen now is the Law Commission report is going to be keenly deliberated and discussed by the government. The government also told the Supreme Court in the May 1st hearing, the Advocate General, Mr. Venkatramani, had stated that it could be possibly some things undiscussed in the Parliament. I think the best route forward for a law, therefore, has to be discussed in the Parliament, and that is the reason the Supreme Court also last month put this in abeyance. So what could possibly happen now is, number one, the Law Commission of India report that has been given to the Law Minister shall be deliberated and discussed internally within the government quarters. Number two, after it's discussed, it's possible that they will come out with some sort of an idea as to how to put it in the Parliament. And number three, whatever the Parliament says will then be put forward. The Supreme Court has to be told what is going to happen in the case. Remember, a lot of cases that come to the Supreme Court, the one thing the Supreme Court is extremely sure is that there are certain laws that have to be made in the Parliament. They will not go forward and try and deliberate on them because it is in the juncture of the Parliament. We're seeing the same kind of an argument happen in the same-sex marriage case, where the Supreme Court says that there is separation of powers and therefore it is for the Parliament to come forward and put out a law. But let me once again, viewers, first tell you the breaking news that's coming in. The Law Commission of India submits its report to the Law Minister. Justice Avasthi, who's the chairman of the Law Commission, has said this law needs to continue to be in the statute books. The argument that was given by certain petitioners in the Supreme Court that it's an anti-colonial, it's a colonial age legacy does not hold true because of the glaring realities in India. That's what this Law Commission has said. In the 88-page report that has been submitted to the Law Minister, they also say the punishment for sedition law needs to be enhanced. I think it's a very strongly worded report that has come from the Law Commission. It will be meeting both its backers as well as people who are going to be against it. The reason is sedition is sometimes used by governments and state governments for their own ulterior purposes. And this is the one argument that has been put forward earlier for sedition law to be repealed. The other side, like the Law Commission report is saying, is there are certain anti-national elements who try and incite violence. The punishment is only going to be given to those people where we are actually seeing violence taking place. So a very concrete report coming in. We have to now see the ball in the court of the government as to how they're going to report and how they're going to be looking at it. I would like some if we can get some reactions on this, some activists and lawyers who could join us on the phone line, and if our director could help us with that. They've said there are a plethora of examples of various laws being misused by ill-intentioned individuals only to settle their personal scores in cases of personal rivalries and vested interests, which even the Supreme Court has recognized. Of late, we've seen that there is a certain thing that started happening in India, a certain habit that's being formed where people have started criticizing the government, going to the Supreme Court, trying to get public opinion motivated for motivated reasons. So keeping that in mind, I think the Law Commission of India says that there has to be this sedition law that needs to be continuing to be in the statute books. In fact, the report also goes on to say never has there been any plausible demand to repeal any such law merely on the ground that it's being misused. This is only because every abuser of the law, there might be 10 genuine victims of the offense which need to be protected. So protecting victims is one of the reasons why they want sedition law to not be repealed. In the same vein, they've said, while any alleged misuse of 124A can be reined in by laying down adequate procedural safeguards, repealing the provision altogether can have serious ramifications. And viewers, this is a very important part. They say for the security and the integrity of the country, with the subversive forces getting a free hand to further their sinister agenda as a consequence. An extremely important sentence, and I'm going to reread that because this is really the aim of sedition law according to the Law Commission. The reason for continuing to have sedition law on our statute books, as the chairman of the Law Commission, Justice Avasthi, has said, because there are serious adverse ramifications for the security and the integrity of the country, with the subversive forces getting a free hand to further their sinister agenda as a consequence. We at Republic TV have for the longest number of years covered what the lobby is trying to do. They have a sinister agenda. Sometimes we are seeing them trying to get international mileage out of certain seditious statements that are made nationally as well as internationally when certain ministers travel. So I think it's extremely important to also understand where the Law Commission is coming from. They received this reference from the Home Ministry in 2016, and finally amendments have been suggested by the Law Commission.
Absolutely, of course. The Law Commission of India, of course, has said that sedition law should be retained. Viewer, that's a big breaking news that we are tracking right now. Republic TV has accessed the report, the Law Commission report. And one thing that is highlighted here is that India's ground reality is different. That is the most important thing that has been pointed out here. Section 124A that pertains to sedition law should be retained. That is what the Law Commission has recommended. In fact, they've gone on to say, as Rhythm was pointing out, that it should be made more stringent. All right, Rhythm, going back to you. As we talk about India's ground reality different, and it's a panacea for radicalization, as it's been pointed out in this report. They've also said that they've studied cases in UK and US as well, and those countries, some of the if I could read out from here, they've said that the comparative jurisdictions like the US, UK have their own history, geography, population, etc., which are not comparable to Indian circumstances. And despite this, what some of these countries have actually done is that they have merged the sedition law with counter-terror legislations. And henceforth, this is for India, there might be counter-arguments for this, that, we need to do away with the colonial laws, and this is something that should not be something that we are, working on. But of course, we'll keep a track on all the developments coming in, and Rhythm will, of course, be with us as we go back to the story and get you more details on that. But right now, it's time to move on, viewers, to some more breaking news that is coming in at this point in time. Let's take a look. All right, there's some breaking news coming in.